So this is a graph. Pressure is along the y-axis, volume is along the x-axis. PV graph. So let's look at this graph for different processes. So AB, if I look at AB, so AB is a line which is parallel to x-axis. Because the line is parallel to x-axis, we can say that the y coordinate, that is the pressure, is constant along this AB. So from A to B, if we are going, the pressure is constant because the line is parallel to x-axis. If you look at AE, from A to E if I go, then the line is parallel to the y-axis. So AE, if you look at, I can say that the volume is constant because volume is the x coordinate. So the AE is parallel to y-axis. So along AE, volume is constant. Now AC, it's a curve, and temperature is constant along AC. So I can say it's a process where temperature is constant, and such a process is called isothermal process. Along AD, that is from A to D, there is no heat exchange. That is, neither is heat coming in, nor is heat going out. So I can say that Q is equal to 0. And hence I can call it an adiabatic process. So A to B is isobaric because pressure is constant. A to C is reversible isothermal because temperature is constant along AC. Then A to D, if I look at, it is reversible adiabatic. Adiabatic because along AD there is no heat exchange, that is Q is 0. And AE is isochoric because along AE the volume is constant.
Sir, can you scroll down?
So you should be able to identify the process just by looking at the graph. Okay. Now let's come to zeroth law of thermodynamics. This is the zeroth law. So it says that if there are two systems which are separately in thermal equilibrium with a third system, then the two systems are also in thermal equilibrium with each other. This is the statement of the zeroth law. Let's understand the example for this. Let's say I have this arrangement. Okay. So if I have three bodies as shown in this, let's say that A and C have the same temperature and B and C also have the same temperature. So A and C have the same temperature and B and C also have the same temperature. So this means that A and B also have the same temperature. So if A and C have temperature which is equal, B and C have also the same temperature. This would mean that A and B have the same temperature. So this is an example of zeroth law. Okay. Now let's come to this example. Let's say we have a system like this, and there are two compartments inside this. So there's a wall which separates the two compartments. So if I show you two compartments, and this is a wall. First compartment has pressure PA and temperature TA. And the second compartment has pressure as PB and temperature as TB. The wall which separates these two compartments, this wall is adiabatic wall. So heat cannot flow through this wall. Also outside this entire system, there is another covering which is again adiabatic. So this is also adiabatic. So even from outside, no heat can flow. Now, I can say that because this temperature TA does not change with time, also TB does not change with time. That means TA remains TA even after a long time. So if I keep measuring the temperature after different time intervals, I can say that TA remains the same. So TA does not change. Also TB does not change. So TA does not change and TB also does not change with time. And so I can say this entire system is in thermal equilibrium because there is no change in temperature with time. That means if temperature does not change with time, I can say that that particular system is in thermal equilibrium. So TA remains constant, PV also remains constant. So there's no change in temperature with time. And so I say that this entire system is in thermal equilibrium. No transfer of heat or work takes place through any of these boundaries. So temperature T also remains same, temperature Tv also remains constant. No temperature changes. So I can say that the whole system is in thermal equilibrium. So just keep one thing in mind here in this particular system. TA is some different temperature and TB is also some different temperature, which means that TA is not equal to TB. TA is not equal to TB. But still I'm saying that the entire system is in thermal equilibrium because the temperature does not change with time. That means this portion has TA and this portion will maintain the same temperature. That means it will not show any change in TA with time. Likewise, if I look at this particular compartment, even in this particular compartment, the temperature will remain TV. It will not increase or decrease. So even though TA is not equal to TV, still I would say that this entire system is in thermal equilibrium because the value of TA here remains same, that is TA remains TA itself. There is no increase or decrease in TA with time. And also here the value remains as TB. So TA remains TA, TB remains TB. There is no change in any of the temperatures with time. So the entire system is in thermal equilibrium. So the temperatures of the compartments do not change with time. They do not change with time because every wall is adiabatic. So there is no scope for any exchange of heat. Also, there is no scope for any work. Why there is no scope for work? Because you don't have any piston or any arrangement that can do work. So there is no scope for heat, there is no scope for work, and so temperatures do not change with time. Now let's take another case where I say that I have two compartments and now these two compartments are separated by a wall and this wall is now conducting in nature. This wall is now conducting in nature. Means what? Means now heat can flow through this wall. So it's a conducting wall. So here temperature is TA, and here temperature is TB initially. So initially, let's say that the temperatures inside were different. This wall is a conducting wall. That means what? Heat can flow through this wall. But the external jacket, which is outside the entire system, which is surrounding the entire system, is adiabatic. So this remains adiabatic. And this wall is a conducting wall. Now what will happen is, eventually, that is slowly and gradually, heat will flow through this wall from one compartment to another. Why? Because now the wall is conducting, so heat can flow through this wall. Let's say that if temperature TA is higher than temperature TB, then the heat will flow like this, that is from A till B. So heat will flow through this wall from higher temperature to lower temperature. Now after a certain point of time, maybe after half an hour, after 1 hour, so after some period, because heat has started flowing, what will happen is eventually both the temperatures will become equal. That means now a point will come where we have T, that is this common temperature is maintained. And once this temperature is constant, and once I say that both the compartments have arrived at the same temperature, that is both these have attained temperature T because heat was flowing through the wall. Now there is no further flow of heat. So now the temperature is same in both the compartments. So now the temperature is same in both the compartments. So now also I will say that the system is in thermal equilibrium because temperature is now again constant. There is no further change in temperature. So now this common temperature throughout the system is T. So what happened? Initially temperatures were different. TA and TB, they were two different temperatures. But because the wall is conducting, temperature became same for both the compartments because heat was flowing through this wall. And heat keeps flowing in order to equalize the temperatures of the two bodies, that is the two compartments. And after some period of time, both the compartments attain the same temperature, and now there is no further flow of heat. So this is also a case of thermal equilibrium. This conducting, the word conducting is also called diathermal. So either you say conducting or you use this word diathermal. Diathermal means a wall through which heat can flow.
Sir, can you scroll down? Sir, after the note.
This was the case that we were talking of. That is, if the boundary between two compartments is diathermal, but the external wall outside the system is adiabatic, then heat will flow from that compartment which has a higher temperature to that compartment which has a lower temperature. And ultimately, both the compartments will attain the same temperature. So that will again be a state of thermal equilibrium. But another first law of thermodynamics. So these are the statements of the first law. The total energy of the universe is always constant, or we can say the total energy of an isolated system is always constant. Or we can say this, that is, energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can only be converted from one form to another. All these three are the same. That means all three statements would ultimately mean the first law itself. So the first statement is the total energy of the universe is constant. The second statement is the total energy of an isolated system is constant. And the third statement is energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can be converted from one form to another. Okay. Now we have to understand the mathematical representation of the first law. So this is a mathematical representation. Delta U is equal to Q plus W. Or if I want to write it in the very basic manner, that is if I want to write it mentioning very small amounts, then I have to write in terms of D, small d. So du will be equal to dq plus dw. So that du is a very small amount of change in internal energy. dq is a very small amount of heat, and dw is a very small amount of work done. So when I want to specify that it is a very small amount, then I have to use small d. And if I write delta, that is delta U is equal to capital Q plus capital W. If I don't use the word small d, then it means that I'm not talking about very small, I'm talking about a large amount of change. So if delta U is written, it means that it is a large amount of change. If du is written, that means it is a very small amount of change in internal energy. So that letter small d indicates that the amount of change is very small. So delta U, what is delta U? Delta means change and U means internal energy. So delta U is the change in internal energy. Capital Q. Q is heat exchanged. So it could be either heat inflow or it could be heat outflow. W is work done. So delta U is change in internal energy of the system. And Q is the heat exchange. So Q could be either inflow or outflow. And W is the work done. So it could be by the system or on the system. Either you can write U or U can also be written as E. So E also means same as U. That is internal energy. So either you write in terms of small d or you do not write in terms of small d. Now, like I said, U is also denoted by E. And here in this particular form, that is in this particular formula, whatever work done you see at W, that W that we are going to talk of is going to be the pressure volume related work. That means the work due to expansion or the work due to compression or the work that occurs due to change in volume. So we will be dealing with only PV work. PV means the pressure volume relationships. So we are not considering any electrical work here or any other type of work. We are considering only the pressure volume work. That means the work that is done because of a change in volume. It could be an expansion, it could be a compression. Let us understand the different types of work done. W is the symbol for work, and these are the different ways of evaluating the work for different types of
Sir, can
processes.
you show previous statement?
So the first type of work, if you look at, it is for a system where the pressure is constant. If the pressure is constant, then what happens? The formula for work done is minus P delta V, where delta is always change. Delta stands for change. So delta V is change in volume. Change in volume is V2 minus V1. V2 is the final volume and V1 is the initial volume. So V2 minus V1 will be the change in volume. So delta V is V2 minus V1 and P is the pressure, which is constant. So in a process where the pressure is constant, we can use this formula for finding out the value of work done. If pressure is not constant, in general, we can use this formula, that is W is equal to minus integral of V1 to V2 PdV. This is integration sign. So this integral sign is telling us the general way of calculating work. That is the general expression to evaluate work done is using this formula. That is W is equal to minus integral PdV, where initial volume was V1 and the final volume is V2. So in general, this is the expression for work done. If volume is constant, then I can say that work is zero because dV will be zero if volume is constant. So if dV is zero, W also becomes equal to zero. For an irreversible process, the formula for work done is this minus P external into V2 minus V1. So for any irreversible process, we can use this formula. Because in an irreversible process, the external pressure is constant. In any question, if they tell you that the external pressure is constant, that means the process is an irreversible process. For a reversible isothermal process, this is a formula of work done. And we will assume every gas to be an ideal gas. So we can use this relation for any isothermal process, that is V2 upon V1 is equal to P1 upon P2. V2 is the final volume, V1 is the initial volume, P1 is the initial pressure, P2 is the final pressure of the gas. So if the process is an isothermal process, I can say that P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2, or I can say V2 upon V1 is equal to P1 by P2. So this is nothing but this. This is for an isothermal process. And if the process is reversible isothermal process, then the formula for W is this, minus 2.303 nRT. N is the number of moles. Whenever you see N, N means number of moles. N, R is 8.314 joule per mole Kelvin. So the value of R is 8.314. T is temperature of the process, which is constant because it's isothermal. Log V2 upon V1. V2 is the final volume of the gas. V1 is the initial volume of the gas. For a reversible adiabatic process, this is the formula of work done. N is again the number of moles. R is 8.314. T2 is final temperature. T1 is the initial temperature. So I can say T2 minus T1 is equal to delta T. Delta T is what? Initial final temperature is T2 minus T1. So T2 minus T1 is called delta T. So NR delta T upon gamma minus 1. This it's upon. So divided by gamma minus 1. Now what is this gamma? So gamma is equal to Cp upon Cv. Last time we discussed molar heat capacities. So capital C means molar heat capacity. Cp means molar heat capacity at constant pressure. And Cv means molar heat capacity at constant volume. So gamma is Cp upon Cv. It is the ratio of the heat capacities. It is the molar heat capacities at constant pressure and constant volume. Now, R upon gamma minus 1, that is this portion, R upon gamma minus 1, this can be written as CV. CV is R upon gamma minus 1. So I can write R upon gamma minus 1 as CV. That CV is what? Molar heat capacity at constant volume. So CV is R upon gamma minus 1. So I can write that W is equal to N CV into T2 minus T1. Next one. If a gas expands in vacuum, that means if the external pressure is zero, because vacuum means that the external pressure is zero, then we call it free expansion of gas. So work done in case of free expansion of a gas is zero. Why? Because pressure will be zero. Vacuum means pressure is zero. So when I say W is equal to minus PdV, it will be what? Zero. Pressure is zero. PV, which is integral of zero, that is zero. So work done is zero in case of free expansion of a gas because the external pressure is zero. Vacuum means that the pressure is zero, that the external pressure is zero. And hence the work done will be zero. Now, next case. If we have an irreversible adiabatic process, if we have an irreversible adiabatic process, then we have to use these two formulae in sequence, that is one after the other. So the first formula is what? N CV into T2 minus T1 is equal to minus P2. That P2 is what? P2 is the external pressure. So minus P2 multiplied by nRT2 upon P2 minus nRT1 upon P1. Now nRT2 upon P2, this entire thing is nothing but V2 according to an ideal gas equation. So ideal gas equation is what? PV is equal to nRT. So I can say that if I want to find out the value of V2, that is the final volume, then V2 will be equal to what? V2 is what? nRT2 upon P2. So nRT2 upon P2 is the value of V2. Similarly, V1 will be nRT1 upon P1. So N is the number of moles of the gas. So using this equation, we can find out the value of the unknown parameter. For example, if the final temperature is not given to us, that is T2 is not given to us, then we can find out the value of T2 using this formula. So this is what? This entire thing is V2 and this entire thing is V1. And then once you have calculated the value of T2, then we can use W is equal to NCV T2 minus T1. So if we are asked to find out the work done in an irreversible adiabatic process, then first use this and then use this. So ninth one is again what? If pressure is constant, that is for an isobaric process, W is minus P into V2 minus V1. Now, we have a chemical reaction occurring in a closed container. If the container is closed, that means the volume of the container is fixed. So there is no change in volume. That means I say that delta V is 0. Because delta V 0 means what? There is no change in volume. Why is there no change in volume? Because the container is a closed container. If delta V is 0, then the work done will also be 0. Why? Because W is equal to minus integral of P dV. If volume is constant, that means dV is 0, and so work done becomes 0. So if they ask you what is the work done if a chemical reaction occurs inside a closed vessel, then we'll say that the work done is 0 because the vessel has a fixed volume, and anything which has a fixed volume means that delta V is 0 or dV is 0, and if dV is 0, then the work done is also 0. But now if we have a chemical reaction that occurs inside an open vessel, let's say now we have a chemical reaction that takes place inside a vessel and that vessel is open. So this is a second case, case 2. A chemical reaction which occurs inside a vessel and that vessel is an open vessel. Then the formula of work done is this. W is minus delta NgRT, where R is again 8.314 joule per mole Kelvin, is temperature of the reaction. Now, what is this delta Ng? Let's understand this. Delta Ng is moles of gaseous products minus moles of gaseous reactants. Now, if I give you a chemical reaction like this, let's say this is the reaction. Now, if we want to find out the value of delta Ng for this reaction, then delta Ng will be equal to moles of the gaseous products minus moles of the gaseous reactants. Which is a product here? NH3 is a product here. So NH3 का जो mole है, that is 2. So I'll write here 2 minus moles of gaseous reactants now. I have two reactants, N2 and H2. The value of coefficient of N2 is 1 and the value of coefficient of H2 is what? 3. So I can write 1 plus 3. Total is 1 plus 3 because it is the total number of moles of the gaseous reactants. So 2 minus 4 minus 2. So minus 2 is the value of delta Ng for this reaction. Similarly, if I have another reaction, let's say we have this reaction. This is the reaction for us. Now again we want to find out the value of delta Ng for this reaction. Again, moles of the gaseous products. Now we have two products, one is CaO and one is CO2. But then we are supposed to consider only gases. We are not supposed to consider solids or liquids because delta Ng, that G stands for gases. We have two products here, CaO and CO2. CaO is a solid because you can see that small s is written after CaO. So CaO is a solid and CO2 is a gas. So I will ignore the solid. I will just focus on the gas. 1 is the coefficient of CO2 here. So I will write here 1. I will not look at the solid. So leave it, ignore it. And again, now I will look at the reactant, that is the left-hand side of the reaction. And I will look for gases present. Again, I see that there are no gases present here because CaCO3 is a solid here. So I will ignore that as well. So delta Ng is equal to 1 minus. After minus, I am supposed to look at the reactants. But there is no gaseous reactant present here. So I will not look at anything. So it is 1 minus 0 and hence delta Ng is 1. So I'm supposed to look at only the gases. First law for different processes. So we started with different processes today in the beginning when we looked at the graphs. So for those processes, now we want to evaluate the first law. So first is isothermal process. In an isothermal process, PV is constant, and so we can say P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2. Temperature is constant, and this is the necessary condition for an isothermal process. Essential condition. Either you say that T is constant or you say that dt is 0. If dt is 0, that by default means that temperature is constant, because dt means change in temperature at any point of time, at any instant of time, a small amount of change in temperature. So there should not be any change in temperature at any point of time. Then only we can say that dt is 0. So if dt is equal to 0, that means temperature is constant. Also, for an isothermal process, delta U is 0. Delta U is what? Change in internal energy. Delta U is 0. Delta H is also 0. Delta H is called change in enthalpy. We will be doing it later. As of now, just remember that for an isothermal process, delta U is also 0 and delta H is also 0. And Q is equal to minus W, where Q is the heat exchanged, W is the work done. So Q is equal to minus W. How did I get this? Let's go back to first law. First law says what? Delta U is equal to Q plus W. This is the first law of thermodynamics, which we did today, the mathematical form of this. Now, in an isothermal process, delta U is 0. So 0 is equal to Q plus W. And so Q is equal to minus W. So from the first law, I get this. Next, adiabatic process. In an adiabatic process, Q is equal to 0. That means there's no heat gained or lost. So Q is 0. Temperature is not constant. So temperature will change. Then adiabatic expansion causes cooling. Means what? If a gas is expanded adiabatically, then the temperature will drop. So T2 will be less than T1 if expansion happens in an adiabatic process. So if adiabatic expansion of a gas takes place, then temperature falls and so T2 is less than T1. Delta U is equal to W. Again, this comes from the first law of thermodynamics. From the first law, we can say delta U is equal to Q plus W. Now Q is 0 in an adiabatic process, so delta U is equal to 0 plus W, or I can say delta U is equal to W. Now, for a reversible adiabatic process, so if you know that the question has clearly mentioned that the process, that the adiabatic process is reversible, then we can use this relation. For a reversible adiabatic process, PV to the power of gamma is constant. P is pressure, V is volume, and V raised to gamma is constant. What is gamma? Again, I told you, gamma is Cp upon Cv. So P into V raised to gamma is constant. So I can write P1 V1 raised to gamma is equal to P2 V2 raised to gamma. Also, I can put V1 as nRT1 upon P1. And V2 is what? nRT2 upon P2. Or I can say P1 is equal to nRT1 upon V1 as per ideal gas equation. And P2 is equal to nRT2 upon P2. So if I want to obtain a relation in terms of volume and temperature, that means I want to eliminate pressure, then I can put P1 as this and I can put P2 as this. So I can put P1 and P2. So I can replace P1 as nRT1 by V1 and I can replace P2 by nRT2 upon V2. So if I do that, I'll get this relation. That is what? This one. T1 V2 upon V1 T2 is equal to V2 upon V1 raised to gamma. Because N R will get cancelled. N and R. So instead of this P1, I have put NR T1 upon V1. And instead of this P2, I have put NR T2 upon V2. On putting, I will obtain this relation. On rearranging the terms, finally I'll obtain this. That is T1 upon T2 is equal to V2 upon V1 to the power of gamma minus 1. And now if I want to eliminate volume, that is if I want a relation in terms of pressure and temperature, then I can use this V1 as nRT1 upon P1 and I can use V2 as nRT2 upon P2. On substituting these values, I'll obtain finally this. This is what I'll obtain. So I have eliminated V1 and V2. So now the relation is in terms of T1, T2, P1 and P2. So finally, this is what we can conclude from these expressions.
सर एक मिनट रिलेशंस दिखाओ.
If you have any doubt in obtaining this, just follow this. This is the mathematical part I can say. Law of exponents. If I use law of exponents, I'll obtain all these things.
सर थोड़ा नीचे करो. So at the end, we can conclude this. For a reversible adiabatic process, I can obtain the three results. Which three? One is P v to the power of gamma is constant. One is T into v raised to gamma minus 1 is equal to constant. And another one is this T raised to gamma into P raised to 1 minus gamma is equal to constant. So these three relations hold true for reversible adiabatic process.
So these three relations you must remember. For what? For a reversible adiabatic process. Next, isobaric process. So isobaric process is a process where pressure is constant and the work done is given as minus P delta V because P is constant. V1 upon T1 is equal to V2 upon T2 and Q is called delta H. What is Q? Heat exchanged. And what is delta H? Delta H is the heat exchanged when the pressure of the system is constant. And the fifth formula, fifth equation comes from the first law of thermodynamics. How it comes? From the first law, we know that delta U is equal to Q plus W. Okay. If pressure is constant, then Q is delta H and W is minus P delta V. If pressure is constant, then Q is called delta H and W is called minus P delta V. So I'm putting these values, I'll get this delta U is equal to delta H minus P delta V. So how do you define delta H? Delta H is heat exchanged when the pressure of the system is constant. Now isocodic process. In an isocodic process, volume is constant. The work done is zero because volume is constant. Whenever volume is constant, work done is zero. Q is equal to delta U. How? Again, first law. Delta U is equal to Q plus W. Because volume is constant, this W goes. And so we are left with delta U is equal to Q. P1 upon T1 is equal to P2 upon T2. So these are the formulae for isocodic process. The formula related to an ideal gas. These are few formulae which we will be requiring for ideal gases.
Sir, one more.
So for an ideal gas, these are the formulae that we need to know. So delta U is equal to N Cv delta T. This the second formula, extremely important. Delta U is change in internal energy. N is the number of moles of gas. Cv is molar heat capacity at constant volume. Similarly, the fifth one, delta H is equal to N Cp delta T. Again, N is the number of moles. Cp is molar heat capacity at constant pressure. Seventh formula is called Mayer's formula. Cp minus Cv is equal to R. Seventh formula is called Mayer's formula. That is Cp minus Cv is equal to R. And the eighth formula we have discussed already. That is Cp upon Cv is equal to gamma. Now, this small Cp is specific heat capacity at constant pressure. This means what? This is with respect to 1 gram. That is for 1 gram. What is the heat capacity? That is called specific heat capacity. And this is what? This capital Cp is molar heat capacity. That is for 1 mole. Right. So this is for 1 mole. And this is for 1 gram. So specific heat capacity is for 1 gram, molar heat capacity is for 1 mole. Same holds true for this. Again, this is for 1 gram, and this is for 1 mole. Now, what is the value of the Cv? For monoatomic gases, we have Cv, that is capital Cv, that is molar heat capacity at constant volume, as 3 upon 2 R, where R is again 8.314. So you have to remember that capital Cv is 3 by 2 R for monoatomic gases. Now, what do you mean by monoatomic gases? If I have helium or neon, argon, xenon, krypton, radon, these all are monoatomic gases. That means they have only one atom in their molecules. So Cv is 3 by 2 R for such gases, monoatomic. All the inert gases are monoatomic. And if I say what is capital Cp, then easily I can find out Cp as Cp minus Cv is equal to R. That is the Mayer's formula which we did, the seventh one. Right? So this is the Mayer's formula. Using the Mayer's formula, we can find out the value of Cp. So if we know that Cv is 3 by 2R, we can find out the value of Cp using Mayer's formula. And what is Mayer's formula? This Cp minus Cv is equal to R. Put the value of Cv here as 3 by 2R, and from here you can get the value of Cp as 5 by 2R. That means if you just remember the value of Cv, you can immediately get the value of Cp by using Cp minus Cv is equal to R. And gamma. Gamma is what? Cp upon Cv. So just divide Cp by Cv. RR will get cancelled. 2 will get cancelled. We will be left with 5 upon 3. So Cp upon Cv will be 5 upon 3, and 5 upon 3 is 1.66. So if you just remember the value of Cv, you can get the value of Cp, and also you can get the value of gamma. So Cv is 3 by 2R for monoatomic gases. For diatomic gases and linear polyatomic gases, Cv is 5 by 2R. The moment you know Cv as 5 by 2R, you can find out Cp again by using Mayer's formula, that is Cp minus Cv is equal to R, and then gamma will be Cp upon Cv. Gamma comes out to be 1.4. That is 7 by 2R upon 5 by 2R. That is 1.4. Linear polyatomic gases means what? The gases which are linear in nature, linear shape, like carbon dioxide. I have written CO2, N2O. CO2, N2O. CO2 is linear, even N2O is linear. So for linear gases and for diatomic gases, CV is 5/2R. And for triatomic and other polyatomic gases, that means the ones which are not linear, for them we can say that CV is 3R. The moment we know CV as 3R, we can find out the value of CP. CP minus CV is R, so CP will be equal to 4R. CP minus CV is equal to R. CV is known to us as 3R. So from here, if we solve this, CP will come out to be 4R. For polyatomic gases which are non-linear, that means which are not linear. So these are the formulae related to ideal gases. Okay. So just remember that linear polyatomic gases are carbon dioxide and N2O. CO2 is linear in shape and N2O is also linear in shape. Another important point is this: for any ideal gas, the internal energy depends only on temperature. It does not depend on volume or pressure. So it is independent of volume and pressure. So internal energy of an ideal gas depends only on temperature. So I can write these two equations for any ideal gas. What does this mean? This means I am measuring the change in internal energy with respect to change in pressure. That is du upon dp. And this temperature is constant. So I have written temperature outside the bracket. Whatever is written outside the bracket, that is constant. So if temperature is constant and I measure the change in internal energy with respect to change in pressure, there is no change observed, and so I wrote is equal to 0. Why is equal to 0? Because the internal energy depends only on temperature. Since temperature has been kept constant, the internal energy will also remain constant. So even if you change the pressure, the internal energy will not change because the temperature is constant. And how do I know that the temperature is constant? ये जो बाहर नीचे लिखा है T, जो भी चीज बाहर लिखी जाती है नीचे, उसका मतलब है वो चीज कांस्टेंट है. So at constant temperature, the internal energy of any ideal gas also remains constant. Same holds true for this relation also. Again, temperature is written outside. नीचे लिखा है temperature T. That means temperature is constant. And since temperature is constant, there is no change in internal energy with any change in volume, because you are measuring the change in internal energy with respect to change in volume here. So you wrote du upon dv. So du upon dv will be 0 because temperature is constant. So only if temperature changes will the value of u change. So these two relations are for ideal gases. So at constant temperature, the internal energy of an ideal gas remains constant. Okay, I'll share the video.